And we are officially live. Hey everybody, my name is Wes.
And I'm Lori.
Lori, today we're talking about accounting. Oh man, this is a fun one. This is the time of year everybody's getting everything set up and just preparing.
Wes, it has been a little bananas. And you know how I feel about fruit.
and so just quickly introduce yourself to everyone so that way they know who you are, because a lot of people used to see me, but they don't get to see you all the time.
That's fair. I am Lori. I have been at ChurchTrac for 11 and a half years. I am the support manager among other hats that I wear, but accounting seems to be the thing that I do well.
And today, it's accounting. But before we talk about accounting, just a few things to remind everybody about. First and foremost, if you like to learn how to do things like ChurchTrac by watching videos, we have a great YouTube channel. You should totally check that out. I actually learned how to fix my garage door the other day watching the YouTube video.
I wondered how you did that. I wondered if it was a YouTube special.
Yeah, and also a really great resource that we have for all of you ChurchTrac users out there is our Facebook group. That is such a great place. I see so many good conversations happening there.
Oh yeah, and interesting things, like interesting shares. It's quite a conglomeration.
Conglomeration is a good word. Well, because people are talking about so many ministry things that aren't even ChurchTrac related, but I love seeing that, you know. And then the last resource, I think we have to remind everybody of, that getting help in ChurchTrac, super easy.
Yes, it's so easy, guys. There is an orange help button in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and it doesn't matter what your tone is, it's always orange. In that orange help button, the help is amazing. So depending on the screen you're in, it's going to give you specific help topics, or you can show all help topics. You can ask us a question. You can create a support ticket. You can schedule a phone call. There are so many resources. But you know, I actually love our user guide, Wes.
Yeah.
It's so helpful. It's got pictures, it's got videos, it's got how-tos. So no matter what you're doing or what type of learning you have, we touch on it.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times it's already got all that info, and so sometimes when people ask us a question, they don't realize we have a support article that has a video right there, and so we send the link and they're ready to go. Right,
it's so easy to use. Even I can do it.
And we're going to be mentioning a few different things today, especially as we talk about getting started, setting up, all that. So kind of just a quick version of what we're going to be doing today. So today we are going to have a Q&A at the very end.
Yes, we are.
And we are, spoiler alert, we're actually going to have just a finance Q&A in general next week that you can sign up for, which I think is going to be bananas just like today is. But we will have a Q&A at the very end. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I've got one of our people on our team that's actually monitoring the chat this whole time, and they're going to try to answer the questions the best as they can. Now, obviously, if you ask a question that they just can't answer in this sort of environment, you may need to just create a support ticket, just because we are talking about accounting here. But we will have lots of time to answer questions at the end and everything as we go through that. But today, we're going to talk about how to set up accounting and just kind of the initial setup. What does that look like? We're going to talk about the core features. We don't have time to cover every core feature like in great depth, but at least to give you a good overview. And then we're going to talk about some pro tips that you and I kind of got together yesterday, just brainstorming like, hey, if a church knew these 5 things, like what would they be that makes them kind of successful with ChurchTrac Accounting?
Exactly.
So, all right, well, Lori, let's just do a quick overview, like 2 minutes, like just give everybody the lay of the land of the accounting screen.
Okay. So when you go into ChurchTrac, your menu is on the left or at the top. You're going to select accounting/budgets. This screen, when you initially go into the screen, is going to be a big blank like this. It's just going to have your tabs across the top. It's going to have your additions that you're going to add and even a quick watch of video. I love this, Wes, because you can get the helps. So the very first thing that we suggest, especially we being me, I suggest is building your funds. And a lot of people don't know what funds are, Wes.
Yeah.
Funds are, if you will, by definition, the designation or the bucket that you're going to keep your monies in within your bank accounts. Okay? So the first thing you're going to do is create your funds. And the default, Wes, is the general funds.
Yeah, and by default, every ChurchTrac account has that.
Every ChurchTrac account has it. You can add the funds that you need, but typically 5 to 7 is max. I've gone in and seen 30 funds, and that gets a lot to manage, especially if you have a lot of bank accounts.
Yeah.
So it gets a lot. Once you have your funds in place, Wes, you're going to create your categories. Each category has a default fund option that you're going to want to assign. Okay, so if you're doing missions, you're going to want a missions category and then a missions fund so that they're linked. And the reason you're making these connections is because in giving, when you're assigning contributions, you don't use funds, Wes. You only use category designations. That category has a default fund in the background that's going to work automatically. So you're setting up and providing a foundation, if you will, for your accounting to work well. Okay. Once you get those two things in place, you're going to go in and create your bank accounts. This is going to be your main checking. If you have a savings account, you're looking at a liability account like a credit card, CDs that the church may have, whatever accounts that deal with bank information are going to be built here.
And this is something I think a lot of churches that are coming from programs, because I see in the chat a few people are saying QuickBooks and other programs similar to that seem to be the most popular options people are coming from to ChurchTrac. And I think chart of accounts is one that kind of throws them off because they're used to chart of accounts. They come over to ChurchTrac and they see categories and they're like, okay, so do I put all this in the accounts tab? And so we see a lot of people make that mistake.
And it causes a lot of confusion because of terminology. Our help guide actually provides the definitions of what we mean when we say bank account, category, and fund, so that you have that data right in front of you. And one of the things I do want to point out about our user guide is in our user guide, we actually have a topic called Getting Started with Accounting. Remember I told you there are videos, Wes, that you can watch?
Tons.
Then we have hyperlinks to specific things like navigating through accounting, how you set things up, switching from QuickBooks because that's a really big, complicated process, and we want to give you the tools to make that change. Okay? The next steps, and then other resources. One of my favorite other resources, Wes, is this new accounting chart that we have in place that actually gives you a great overview of how accounts and funds and categories intermingle with one another.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit just so I can see it a little better?
Maybe. There we go.
Yeah.
You're testing my knowledge.
Sorry, you've got glasses on and I don't have glasses on, so I needed that.
This will print out on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
Cool.
So we did make sure that that was there because this is such a great tool. Again, we put our definitions on here and an example of a transaction that you can create once all of your parts and pieces are together. Okay? Okay, what else, Wes? Let's see.
So that's just kind of
that quick overview.
Going through now, you kind of already alluded to setting up how you went to the funds and then you went to categories and then going to accounts. So let's kind of dive in and let's just create one in each one of those things. Okay. That way people can kind of see the idea of how to set it up, at least on the most basic level.
Sure. So one of the things that I will tell you, Wes, is when you're doing accounting, and one of the things that we say in our help guide is that once you get things set up the way we tell you to set it up, and you want somebody to look at this, create a support ticket, send it in, we will take a look at your accounting before you do 2 or 3 months worth of data.
Yeah.
And then find it doesn't work right. Because we want it, again, to be foundational from the get-go.
Yeah, and by us catching things early on, it saves a lot of time. And
both in support and in functionality. So keep that in mind when you're doing this, is we really want to make this work best for you. It's not as complicated as other programs, but it's still accounting.
Yeah.
Okay? So in the funds, when you go to create a fund, when you click the add fund, you're going to type the name of the fund here. One of the things that you're going to note is that there are designated contributions and there are designated spendings that occur that need to be grouped together. Missions, youth, children's ministries, ladies ministry, men's ministry, these kind of things. So by creating your funds to begin with, you're actually setting things up to be able to use them later.
Yeah.
Okay? You do not enter balances in this, Wes.
That's for later.
Yes, that's for later when you're creating your transactions. So once you get your fund set up, which this is actually probably the easiest part, then you move over to your categories. And you're like, okay, so I have these categories. These come built into the program. I haven't built these yet, okay? But when I want to add a category, I just go to the add button. I do missions income, and the reason I call it missions income is because when I'm entering this, Wes, in the giving screen, I want to be able to quickly identify it.
Okay.
Okay, you can have missions expenses, you can have missions as the parent category, but you're probably going to have two sets, one income and one expense delineator. So you want to build subcategories under that.
And this is something I see common for a lot of churches is they'll have like missions income, missions expense,
right,
and then whatever income, whatever expense for all these other categories
right,
as they keep going.
Now, when you build these, it's really important to note, Wes, that they go to the bottom.
Yeah.
They always go to the bottom. But when it's highlighted blue, you see the properties. These properties mean a lot because remember, we just named this missions income, but it defaults as an expense. So we have to change that. Make sure you catch that because if you don't catch that, it's going to affect how your transactions report.
Yeah.
Okay? The default fund is going to be my missions fund. I'm setting up my foundation. And then if I need to go add missions projects that I have, such as foreign missions or local missions or shoeboxes for children or whatever.
Yeah.
You just go in and you keep adding, and then there's a subcategory of option that you just go in and select and say, where do I want it to go?
Perfect.
Okay.
Now, one thing I see category number, and this is something I get asked all the time from churches, because they're used to having categorized numbers for all their different areas. So if that's something a church wants to do, they can leverage that.
You can leverage that. And Wes, what the category number is typically used for in ChurchTrac, I'm not saying across other accounting platforms, but in ChurchTrac, the category number is for ease of entry when you're entering giving. You can do 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1,007 or whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't have this grandiose purpose of delineating income and expenses within ChurchTrac. It's
Correct.
what you could bring from another platform if you're used to, but it's not a required field in our program.
Cool.
Okay. Accounts.
Now this is the big one.
This is huge because these are, and I can't iterate this enough, bank accounts.
Yeah.
These are not, your categories. When you add a bank account, we take you through a series of questions. This series of questions is for your benefit. Is this an actual account held at a bank or financial institution? If you say yes, it takes you to the next series of questions. Do you have recent statements for this account, or can you retrieve a statement online? Because you're going to need a starting date and a starting balance from the statement. Now, I know what this says, and I understand how the program is intended to be set up, but I want to explain that in a minute, okay? What type of account is this? Is it a credit card? Then it's a liability. Okay. Is it a bank account, like you have liquid assets in there? Oh yeah. So we want to put what kind of account it is. Is it Bank of America? Is it your checking account? Is it, I don't care what you call it. You can call it peanut butter and jelly sandwich as long as you know what you're calling it.
Now I see a lot of churches, and I actually did this too, is using just the last 4 digits of the account number like you just did. That just makes it easier if your church has multiple accounts.
Right. And for linking purposes, later on down the line in your setup, you can do that as well. Okay. Your next button is going to say, what is the start date of this statement? Every bank does this differently. I can't tell you what that looks like. That's why it's really important that you have that documentation in front of you when you're doing this, okay? I suggest that you go 1 day before the start date. This is why.
Okay.
That 1 day before the start date is going to allow you to set this up to show your records moving forward.
Okay.
So if your bank account, if your statement starts 1/1/2025, I can't even believe I'm saying that, but we're here. Use your bank statement 12/31/24 so it doesn't look like you had an influx of money on the 1st of January.
Okay.
It's more of showing how your finances were when you were getting started.
Okay.
Okay? So let's see, we're going to pick that date. Then what's the balance on your bank statement? So your starting balance is $12,334.29. Do you think I can remember that? $334.29. I don't know what this would be for. But when I create my account, that's what I'm starting with. Okay? So now, Wes, it's important to go into this checking account and look at my beginning balance transaction.
Okay.
All of the money in your bank account, Wes, may not be from tithes and offerings.
Correct, yeah.
It might be missions money.
Yeah.
It might be that you have a building fund going and you have money set aside for that.
Yes.
You have to take into consideration that when you set this account up. So your beginning balance transaction is indicative of where the money belongs within this account. So if I picked a really hard number to start this with, you know that, right?
Yeah, you did.
That wasn't very smart on my part. We're just going to do this one at a time. If I have missions that I'm waiting to send, okay, I have to pick that one, that are in my missions fund, and this is $1,000, I have to keep in mind, and you don't really have to do this, I do this on paper, but, and then I have my youth ministries and expense category, but you get the idea. If this was building fund, if I have everything built in place, my beginning balance transaction is going to reflect where my money belongs in my bank account. And that way, when you close this transaction to save it, guess what? That changes to a multiple category transaction, Wes.
Okay.
And my beginning balance reflects it here, but when I go back out,
this is key.
now my funds update.
Yes.
So my bank account balance and my fund balances match.
And this is probably one of the most common things I think we see from churches that are just starting out is they're like, how do I get money into my funds? Which
Right.
we have a whole video where you show all that. But it's good to just kind of see this in real time, that it's really just a matter of editing that initial transaction. And then you're ready.
And I go in, Wes, I go in and check out people's accounts, and I will see this beginning balance transaction. Instead of them modifying the transaction itself, they're doing all these fund-to-fund transfers, and they're getting all complicated, and then everything gets all messed up, and then they're confused. And I'm like, this is one of those moments where you just have to keep it simple.
Yeah.
You just have to keep it simple. Now, Wes, once you get all this in place, you build this whole process, there are payees that are in place here that you can go in here and set up. Now you say, well, how do I do that? Well, there's two things that you can do. You can go in here and you can add a payee manually. Mm-hmm. I didn't spell electric right.
Eclectic bill?
Electric bill. Electric. I like it. Okay, and I can go in and I can set up all of my categories here. Or within your bank account, Wes, you can add a transaction. This is how you get your transactions in your bank register. You add a new transaction. You put your reference number. If you're paying electronically, you don't need a check number.
Yeah.
But if you're not paying electronically and you're sending a check, okay, you can go in and put this, and I can choose my electric bill, or I can say this is my water bill. These are such good descriptors, aren't you? Aren't you just tickled pink about it? I don't know that I got this, but I don't. So then you set up your categories, you write your transaction, you save it, and you can save this payee for quick entry.
Yeah.
Don't build it and then use it. Build it as you use it.
And I think that's
easier.
why it's so important to show this before we get into like just all the core features, because I see a lot of churches, they want to just go and say, all right, all these memorized transactions, my payees,
right.
I want to go ahead and add those first. If you're going to be adding all this stuff in anyways,
you've
you might
got
as
to
well
write
do
your
as you got it.
bills. Yeah, you've got to write your bills. You may as well just go ahead and do it that way. Okay.
All right. So that's everything as far as just initial setup. Now, obviously, we didn't add a bunch more accounts and a bunch of different funds and categories, and it's very church specific. But in general, I mean, that's how you set up accounting. Now we get into the good stuff of all of the core features of accounting, all of the things going on in here. And you've already kind of alluded to the first part, that account register. So let's take a look at just some of the cool things you can do with that.
So we switched accounts, thanks to Wes. So in here, this is an example. This is Wes's potential account. And we have a checking account, a savings account, a credit card liability. We have a building loan and a petty cash account. And people go, well, how in the world that's not a bank account? Well, that little cash box that you keep in the office, in the safe, or underneath the desk, or wherever you put it, that's still church money. So you want to set that up. And when you're adding your new account, remember, it asks you, is this an account held at a bank or financial institution? If you say no, the next selection says Trac Petty Cash.
I just love how it guides you.
Yes.
For someone like me who I'm going to be honest, I don't read like I should whenever I'm setting things up and stuff.
You're looking for keywords.
I am, or pictures, but this is actually good because it just helps guide people through, especially people that accounting maybe just like scary to them, or they're like, oh, another accounting program for me to have to figure out and learn, and after I just learned this other one a few years back.
Right.
So in terms of all the features, obviously we're not going to have time to like go into great detail of everything, but let's just take a look at some of the features, at least let's go to enter a transaction.
Okay. Do you want to check in account transaction?
Sure.
Now, keep in mind, in here we have a build out of funds, okay? Now, remember I said 5 to 7 funds. We have a few more in here, but these are just examples of things that we have seen. Categories that are already linked in here to different things, including our pledge campaign. That's a giving thing, but we'll talk about that in a minute. In here, one of my favorite things, Wes, and I know this is just me being OCD, so bear with me. But this right here, the show 10 entries, I would rather scroll through this than click across 48 pages. So if I go up here and I say, show me 100 entries, then I can sort through a whole plethora of entries and not have to change pages.
Yeah.
It's just one of my weird out things. Anyway, let's go add a transaction. This is a 2 scroll. There's a scroll here, and then there's an outside scroll too, by the way. Okay, add a transaction. What am I adding?
Anything. Maybe it could be Jimmy's lawn care. I don't know. Got to pay the lawn guy.
So in our references, Wes, we have a next check number. This is going to pull from your other check numbers. The highest check number you had in there, it's going to add 1 to it and put that in here. So you don't always have to enter a check number. You can do the next check number and it'll autofill.
Okay.
These are references. These references are important, but they're not the end all be all.
Okay.
Okay. So if I want to put credit card, it's a free text box too.
Oh, I didn't know that. I learned something new today.
Bada bing. Okay. So if I'm going to pay my credit card account, or this was a credit card payment or a debit card payment, we'll just do debit card because that's better in this instance. See, I even changed it.
Okay.
Okay. I can tab through these fields. I can select a payee that I already have in place. I can also search a payee. There's Jimmy's Lawn Care. Because I set up my payees, or I've paid bills with this automatically before, my category's in place. It's coming from my building fund, and Jimmy gets paid $300 each time, so it autofills, and my notes here.
Yeah.
If Jimmy sends you an invoice, Wes,
you can drag and drop it.
Drag and drop it. Just scan it in with your phone, save it to your computer, put it in your iCloud account. There's so many features. You can also memo this. This memo prints on the check. Thanks, Jimmy, for a great job.
And I just want to ask in the chat, and obviously if you're watching YouTube and Facebook, we're not monitoring that, but for all of you in Vimeo, have you ever had it happen where you're just going through and you're trying to do an audit of your church and you're looking for a transaction and you're having to sift through a bunch of receipts and everything? This is a great feature. Being able to drag and drop those things on there, so you digitally have all of those receipts and invoices from all those vendors. And it's stored in your file storage within your ChurchTrac program too. Yeah. That's the cool part too, Wes. So it's searchable. So now you've got everything in place, you literally save it and boom, there's your transaction. And I know you guys are thinking it's not that easy. I promise you, it really is that easy. It's so easy sometimes it's difficult, Wes. Yeah, well, and that's kind of the funny thing, the inside joke here is that some of the accounts we see that really make a massacre of their accounting is because they are CPAs or they're someone who's been in accounting for many years. Or been using another option, which we will not mention. And it's so complicated. They overcomplicate it, and they bring that mindset into ChurchTrac. And we always have to remind people that, ChurchTrac works a lot like a checkbook, which I don't get that reference much because I've never used a checkbook. But for many people out there who have, they're going to find, oh yeah, it really does. So one of the best things that I heard recently is one of our people made mention that she was in a corporate world, and corporate finance is very complicated. And it is very complicated. Yeah. And it's intentionally complicated because you're invoicing people, then you have to receive payment on invoices, you have to have all these things in place because you have the customer side and the business side, and I get it. And it's not cash basis, and so you're double entry, and so, yeah. And it's just so difficult to process. Churches don't invoice. No. Churches don't have a business side and a customer side. They have a church side. So simple, easy to use financing is the best option, Wes, because you're actually
able to provide transparent reporting with a program that provides you all the complexity you really need.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have multiple income streams and you're, supporting, multiple houses that you're renting and all these other things, it's really not necessary to have such complicated accounting.
And that's one thing I think we always try to be very transparent about too. Like if a church has got a lot of different income streams and they have multiple businesses running out of this church that are not under the umbrella of being tax exempt and stuff, then this is not going to be the solution for them. But I think for 95% of churches that use ChurchTrac, this is the solution that's going to make their life easier. All right, so
that's the key, Wes. It's going to make their life easier.
Yeah.
If they can simplify their thinking.
All right.
That's the big F.
So moving past simplifying thinking and using all that, let's talk about just kind of one of my favorite features, and that's bank sync and import, just because I'm like your typical millennial, Lori. I don't want to have to enter stuff manually if I don't have to. And I think a lot of church leaders are in that boat where they're like, hey,
it's time consuming.
Yeah, I just want to hook my bank, to it and pull in those transactions, or can I just import everything over? And we can do that.
To a point.
Yeah.
And here's where I'm going to correct that, because we do get this question all of the time. Bank sync allows a connection between ChurchTrac and your bank account and Stripe, and the Stripe being the middleman. And Stripe is who you would you would actually go in and link with, and they talk to your bank. So that indication over here is that the bank talks to Stripe and Stripe talks to the bank. Once Stripe and the bank communicate, then they send us back the communication. So we're just the third party that's getting the information at the end, okay? So if something's not coming through, there's not always something we can do about it, Wes.
Yeah.
Another thing that I have seen of late is that the import, which is your bank statement. By the way, I'm old school. You know that. I'm old. I'm old and I'm old school. So that control of that bank statement is, I like to have it because I check things off. The beautiful part about the reconciliation process in ChurchTrac is you do check things off. You put your information in here, you change your date out here to whatever is on your statement, you continue, and you have check boxes.
Yeah.
So it's easy to do with that, okay? But if you're going to sync or import your bank statement because you have a digital format, if it's in a PDF, I can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you have that digital format and you can import, you're going to go to that little button at the bottom of your bank account transactions, and you're going to be given the option to upload a file, or if you have actually linked your bank account, you can go out and request that information to come in.
And just to show that real quick from the account screen, to link a bank account, you go to link accounts.
And this is just the account screen. You click the button. It opens up here on the side and says, none of your bank accounts are linked. Click the button below. You go here to link it. It gives you a disclaimer, okay? Only select bank accounts you want to sync, okay? You continue, and it gives you the screen to link your bank accounts.
Yeah, and then from here, when you agree, you can search your bank.
Right.
And so, for example, if my bank was ViStar, I could pull that in.
And I didn't even spell it right, and it still grabbed it.
Yeah, and this works with about 95% of banks in the United States. There are a lot of small credit unions that are on here, I see all the time. The only caveat is occasionally we'll see some banks that don't sync very well, just because, and it's the issue with the bank. Because they haven't updated their stuff. Or
they have a multi-factor authentication for a commercial account, Wes. So so when you do make the connection, there's two login places. I think it's your email and your password. And if you are using a commercial bank, some, not all, but some do require a code. And there's just not a place to put that code yet. We're working with Stripe to get that rectified. So this is a process that is in place that we're trying to get to the positive side of, but bear with us. And sometimes your bank will also allow you to turn that option off. We have seen that with some of the banks.
But we see a lot of churches, I mean, they use either or, whether you decide to use bank sync or you decide to just go straight to that particular bank account, and then, as Lori shows, importing that bank statement. And again, just to show it off, Lori, when you scroll down, that import button is down there. And from here, you can go ahead and then add that transaction.
I'm having some technical difficulties.
Her mouse stopped working. There it goes.
Here we go.
And then import. And
it's really cool. It's literally drag and drop, Wes, and I do this all the time because I test things for customers and that kind of thing. So the fact that they can upload a file or they can sync, as long as the file format is correct, if you have difficulties, you can always send it to us. We'll look at things. We can also give you information to take back to the bank and say this isn't filling in the right fields.
Yeah.
Because we've done that too.
And while we're here, before we go away, that actions button, that's so key just because we have all these other options available.
So key.
But you can actually create rules. And so when you're importing, because let's be honest, the bank is, much as we would like the bank to give us really nice looking reports, they don't.
They don't. They absolutely, and some of it is an ease that we can't really understand that's not helpful to us in our checkbooks.
Yeah.
So these rules actually help a lot. You can, Wes, who is not much of a rule follower, has created a lot of rules in here, and I like it.
Yeah.
But when you add your rules, it gives you options, ways to do this. I did this for a customer the other day, and I think it was an eye-opening moment because he didn't have any rules in place and he was having difficulty with his imports, and he didn't understand why things were duplicating. And so by adding the rule, it prevented some of the duplications that he was seeing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Now, some other core features to point out. So ChurchTrac, you can print out onto your checks. And so back to our account register.
Say that one more time.
Yeah, you can print out onto your checks. So it doesn't print out the entire check. It prints out into your existing checks you have. And you can do that either by printing out just a single check directly from the transaction, or you can print out all your checks in one big old swoop if you want to do that.
Big old swoop here.
And I just appreciate that you can adjust what type of checks you're using and stuff like that. And I've got a whole backlog of checks in there just because that test account, I'm always messing around.
But Wes, this is what's really cool about this is there's a check all button. So if you had 10 people that you were paying this month and you wanted to run all the checks at the same time, you click check all, and it will just go through and print the checks in the order that you wrote them. And so that's a nice thing. Or you can check just the checks you want and print them. The key to printing a check is you have to have a check number in place.
Yes, you have to have a check number. If you don't have a check number in the transaction, it is not going to know there's a check to go with it.
That's right.
And we talked a little bit about reconciling earlier, but I think we need to talk about reports just because that's a big aspect of accounting. Just to kind of quickly, just the first one I think that I run into all the time, especially when I'm doing like getting started live streams with new people who are in trial in ChurchTrac account, is their income statement. And they're always wondering, where's my income statement? Where's my balance sheet? Or
they call it a P&L.
And that's what I was going to say or they're like, hey, where's the profit and loss statement? Where's my P&L statement? And I always have to remind them that, hey, we're in fund accounting, not fun, which it can be fun.
Hey, I nerd out, and you know that I do. So I don't actually mind accounting. It's one of those.
Well, and that's why you're talking today and not me. But the income statement, for those of you who are coming from something like QuickBooks and you're like, where's the P&L? It's your income statement.
It's your income statement.
And it's just because we're doing fund accounting. And in fund accounting, that's the terminology that's used for it.
Right. Your balance sheet, and there is a misunderstanding with this report as well, Wes. This shows the value or balance of assets and liabilities on a selected end date. So it's the beginning of your use of ChurchTrac, regardless of what that date is, to an end date. So I always say it's the beginning of time because time being what's in your ChurchTrac account.
Yeah.
But this has no bearing. So when you run your balance sheet, it's going to pull from every data entry you have through the date you ended on.
Yes.
Okay? That's very important to note. And we get that all the time is this report's not working. It actually is working exactly the way that it's supposed to work. We have added some new reports.
Yeah, there's a lot of new reports.
We've added a fund sheet, which allows you to run a report per fund and see the exact same information. So I'll pick on that fund right there because I was using it. So it just shows your missions fund. When you go back, we have a fund statement that does the same thing. So if in fact you want to run you have 15 funds, not recommended, but there are churches that have it, and you just want to see what's in each fund, you go run your fund statement and it's going to give you your balances. We'll just do, I don't want those because nobody wants to see zero or unused categories, and we don't want inactive categories. That's why there's buttons are there for you to choose. And then it tells me, we've already paid out our disaster relief. That's why that's empty. That's a good thing. But that gives you the opportunities to run those. Now, Wes, there are some really cool reports in here. These reports apply to funds-based accounting. So when you're running a category overview report, or and you want to see the subcategories and that kind of thing, you have to understand this is not per account. Categories and funds are not account specific.
They're all everything.
You can run them across the board. Remember, that goes back to our chart where it shows the fluidity of those funds and categories. So when you run this category overview report, it's going to show transactions that occurred during your date range up here, but it's also going to show what's going on with these categories.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of account. So if you say, well, that's not how much money I have in my bank account, that's okay. Remember, this is showing the use of your categories and where the money, how much money you have in them, not the account that they belong to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of reports, and I don't want us to nerd out too long on them because I know you can.
I'll behave.
But I just want to point out, you can export most of these accounting reports to a CSV file if you like to live dangerously and,
Or you want to customize your reports.
Yeah.
So there are details that people want to see in there. There is also the ability to change your date range. There's 2 ways to change a date range, Wes.
2 ways.
2 ways. You click in the white space and you go January, and then you go up or down for your years, okay?
All right.
Or you do the drop down. This is just a pre-selection for easy reporting. But if you want to see what happened in a quarter or whatever, I have people that say, I can't go back in time. Well, kind of you can't using the drop down arrow, but if you click in the white space, you do get that calendar. So
yeah.
I try to always impress that on my team to show people that, but it can be confusing. You can also just go back like this if you want to, but I just find it's easier to do my selection. Okay.
Cool. Now
don't forget to pick your day.
We talked about payees a little bit already, but just to kind of reiterate, your payees, you can add all your payees. We even have a payee report at the very bottom. So if you need to generate a list of all your different payees, you can do that. I think what's that little download thing there? You have to refresh me on that one.
It's just an export.
Okay, so that
CSV.
exports it to CSV. Perfect.
Wait, how do you sort them, Wes?
However you want.
But I need these in alphabetical order or order of use. How do I move them?
Just hover over the little arrow to the right.
That's right. It becomes a little hand, and you just hold your mouse down and move it around wherever you want it. And that's the beauty of that. So these are not sortable as in an ascending and descending or alphabetical. You move them into the order you want them. I personally would put them in order of use, but some people like them alphabetically.
All right. Well, now 2 more quick features. So the search feature, this is a feature where you can search your transactions, and you have so many parameters to search with.
Feature.
And this is a feature you would probably say that you use most of the time when you're trying to help someone
Every day.
in a deep support issue find
Every
a
day.
missing dollar amount or whatever. And so if you're like, hey, how in the world does ChurchTrac support team find this stuff so quick? We are using the same tool you
tools.
have. We're going into your account and using your search bar. So I encourage you, if you're struggling and you're trying to figure out where did this money go, what did this particular dollar amount go to, use your search bar, and it's going to make your life easier.
This is where I nerd really, really bad.
I thought you already nerded out. This is like even more.
Oh my gosh, I love this tool. This is my favorite feature probably in all of our program, because I can use this tool to find anything I need to in the accounting registers.
Yeah.
So if these people have years worth of data, I can go in here and expand my date range, which a lot of people forget to do, but go back. I can do a reference. I can search my accounts, all of them, or just one. I can search all of my categories. I can include subcategories if I have a parent that I want to search for. Funds, different amounts, they equal or they're less than or they're greater than.
You can search tags too, which we didn't even talk about tags.
We haven't yet.
Maybe another day.
Accounting tags. There's consistency involved here. You really have to be OCD to really effectively use tags, but
yeah.
This works. Report titles. You can title anything you want to, but even reconciled statuses of transactions. If you're looking for a transaction that's not reconciled and it went back several years and you got to find it, bing, it's so cool.
Well, there you go. Now I know for Christmas I need to get you something accounting related that has to do with search.
I'm an investigator.
And then the last thing I think we just need to bring quick attention to, we're not going to really go into depth of it, but creating budgets in ChurchTrac. You can create a budget for your church very quick and easy. You simply just go to the actions. Yep, create your budget.
First thing is you create it, then you name it. Total.
Toe day.
And then what day do you want to start it?
You can do it today.
Let's go back and start it in September of 24.
There you go.
Okay.
And then you can just check off all of the different categories you would like to apply. Or what I would recommend is you just click that actions button and then have it just check all the categories, and then you can uncheck the ones you don't want.
Right.
And then when you're done, you just hit the create budget button.
So we don't need that one. I'm going to just get rid of a couple things. I don't want that in my budget. I don't want that in my budget. I don't want that in my budget, but I want the rest of it.
They get the idea. All right, so we create the budget, and that's it. It's in there.
It's thinking, boom, it's created.
And then we just start adding our dollar amounts to all those different areas. Just click it, add the dollar amount, it's done. And then here's the cool part. We have a bunch of budget reports built in here as well that you can monitor your budget with. But when it comes time next year to create your church budget, you've already done all the legwork. You can just clone a budget, and then you're ready to go for the next year. And so a lot of times we see churches, their first year of using our budget tool, it takes them maybe 20, 30 minutes to create their budget. And then the next year, they literally can create their budget in 5 minutes. And they're changing a few dollar amounts, whatever, and it's kind of nuts.
And they go, well, where do I find my budget? Well, you got all kinds of budgets. Which one do you want? We got a 2025, we got a 2024, we got some examples, boom.
There you go. All right, now Lori, so we've covered just a quick overview, initial setup, and we've talked about just kind of some of the core features. We obviously didn't hit on every single feature. It's so incredibly hard to hit on every feature. But I want to give everyone just a good takeaway with these last 5 minutes of content before we dive into a bunch of questions and stuff. Just some pro tips that I think are going to help church leaders really get the most out of this. All right, so pro tip number 1.
Set up your payees.
Set up payees.
Remember, you can do this here, or you can do it as you're writing your transactions. But Wes, this is a game changer.
It saves you so much time because you're not constantly having to retype in people's information.
You're not recreating the wheel every month.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, automate your accounting transactions. What we mean by that
is that's pro tip number 2. Automate your accounting reports.
Yes, I'm sorry, I read transactions.
Yeah.
I combined 2, so that's okay. So there is a feature that we did not talk about, and that is automations. Now, every month, somebody needs a report for accounting. There's accountability, accountability.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, you want to go into your automations, which is your settings and automations it's a very last selection.
Yeah, this does not live on accounting. This is on the settings screen, automations tab.
That's because automations have multiple functions, but accounting reports is one of those functions.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're going to go in here and you're going to add, this is accounting report.
And this would be an application automation.
Okay. And here you have some options here, but we're just going to go in here and we're going to add it. And then it says you don't have any actions yet. What do you want to do? We're going to add a new action. We're going to send an email of an accounting report. And you say, wait, this goes back to the other thing you can do is create and automate your accounting transactions. That's one of my favorites, Wes.
Yeah.
But this allows you to do your monthly things and just have it drop in automatically.
Because a lot of times we're generating reports for giving or accounting, and we're doing this once a month or every week we want a certain report. Why not have the system just do it for me every week?
Well, the report selection list is limited at the moment.
Yeah.
Notice how I threw that in there at the moment. There are changes coming. It's on our roadmap. You just have to be patient and wait and see what happens.
Okay.
So we want to send the income statement. We're going to send it to Matt. And then the date ranges, when do you want to send it? How often you want to send it? Well, last month is the better thing. And we can actually save the action step. Tell it when you want it to run. How about every month on the first day of the month at 9 a.m.
So every first day of the month at 9 a.m., Matt is going to get last month's income statement.
That's right. And so it's going to tell you the financial position of the church. And you know what? You just save the changes and then it runs automatically because it's running based on a schedule.
And what's cool is we can add multiple actions here.
Yep.
And so if you had
going.
like a giving report you wanted to go to another user or to Matt, I mean, you could just keep repeating this.
Right. For the pastor, you can send him new people that have visited. There's so many different things you can send. But the idea is it's automated and I don't have to think about it because it went out. And I recommend sending it to more than one person. Like send it to yourself so that you also know that it happened.
Sorry, I was going to say, for those of you who are watching this in the future, rewind and rewatch what I just said because this is key.
It's key.
This feature we just showed you all is probably for many of you going to save you maybe 20 minutes of your life every single week if you're sending out a lot of reports to people. All right, another pro tip. I want to hurry and get these last two out of the way, or three actually. Use accounting tags to better delineate your transactions.
Okay.
And that way it just makes searching for them easier.
So I'm going to just go back into the transaction we created and okay, yard maintenance, tenants. Is that right?
You're wearing glasses. I'm not. This is
Well, we're
going to
go with this, and then I'm gonna hit enter. It turns to be a blue label. That blue label is then searchable in my favorite tool. What is my favorite tool, Wes?
The search.
Woo! Okay, so then I can do this, but then by also using these, by delineating these transactions, we know that Jimmy's lawn care. We know it's maintenance and repairs, but I have another search tool to utilize just to make sure, okay? And it saves. Last thing, use transaction attachments. We have talked about this.
We already showed it earlier, but man.
But I mean, it's huge. So you would go to Walmart, you spent $30 on the youth ministry, you have that Walmart receipt that's killed a tree.
You take your phone, take a picture of it,
and put it and just send it.
Throw it in there.
Yeah, put it on there. This allows you to see, because a year from now or 2 years from now, nobody's going to remember what they spent this on.
Nope.
But if this was, say, a puzzle that a giant puzzle the youth was putting together on youth night, this would be a reason you went, why do we spend such an odd number?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would have that there.
Now this is really we put it as a pro tip, but it's really just a please do this because it's going to make your life so much easier.
Please,
reconcile.
Reconcile.
We should have put the Bible verse on there about.
I forgot it.
Oh man.
Being reconciled.
Yes, but by not reconciling, it causes you to be in a situation where there's less accountability and less
transparency.
I don't want to say eyes on there, but you're not looking at your accounts enough if you're not reconciling.
Well, and you don't know you've missed
fail-safe.
something, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the point where I've synced or I've imported my bank statement, and you get. I see this all the time. They go in and. Why does my mouse keep messing with me here? I'm going to do it this way. Go in, and I got to go to the bottom of this transaction to reconcile. And you see all these little C's because I imported my bank statement. Mm-hmm. A little C, Wes, means it cleared the bank.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that account is reconciled. A reconciled transaction cannot be changed.
Yep.
A cleared transaction can be changed. So we get this time of year. How do you close out last year's books? Well, you reconcile your bank statement. Then nothing can be changed. I've gone into accounts and seen 5 years worth of banking that has not been reconciled.
Yep, and for some people, they're just like, I just didn't think to do it. So if you haven't ever reconciled, you can still start. And if you are just getting into this is a good habit to get into.
Very good habit to get into. It makes your life so much easier.
All right, well, Lori, we just covered enough that as much as we could in 45 to 50 minutes here, but now that was a lot. And I think the best thing for all of you out there is to go back, look at some of our user guide articles, definitely watch the Getting Started with Accounting video and how to set up accounting. One thing I do want to just kind of throw out there for all of you who are just getting started, or if you're watching this in the future, hello future, one thing we offer is a service, we call it CLASS, which is short for the ChurchTrac Limited Accounting Setup Service, which is such a long name, but basically that maybe don't have the time, Lori, to set up their accounting, and they just want to have us set it up for them, so that way they can just hit the ground running, or someone that maybe just doesn't feel comfortable and is like, hey, I was going to pay a CPA to do all this, but can I just have y'all do this? So it's a great option.
What we're doing is we're taking the data that is provided to us and we're building that foundation for the church. And then they take the foundational data that we have provided from their information and they are off to a running start that way. It's expensive. As far as, small churches have a difficult time with it. Larger churches, not so much. But it is such a fantastic investment in your church. Yeah. That's what you're doing, is you're investing in the future of your church and it moving forward smoothly. And we see this every day where this treasurer leaves and this treasurer picks up and they don't know what this guy did because it didn't make any sense and it didn't follow the rules of ChurchTrac and how do I make this right? And if your foundation is strong, Wes, your house is going to stand. Yeah. That's biblical, by the way.
Oh, yes. So that is something we offer, and again, that's optional. But let's do this. So we've got a lot of people hanging out in the chat and everything. I'm actually going to start our Q&A. So let's get our Q&A started. And so in this Q&A, it gives you the opportunity to ask your questions and everything. And what I'm going to do with the chat, I'm actually going to, I think I can disable the chat for now. So chat's about to be disabled. My team just disabled for me. Thank you, team. So we're enabling our Q&A mode. And with Q&A, just go ahead and start asking your questions. And if you see someone else ask a question and you're like, oh, that's a good question, I wanted to ask that, you can actually just bump that one to the top because it'll start, you can basically just vote on the questions you see. And so go ahead, start adding in all your questions there and we can start tearing through these. Now we're gonna have a dedicated Q&A next week, Lori, and it's gonna be church finance. So anything is fair game, whether it's church accounting or church giving and ChurchTrac. But today we're gonna just see how many questions we get for accounting, because I know we're going to have a lot, and we'll see if we can answer as many as possible today.
Well, Wes, one of the things that I wanted to, while you're waiting for our questions to come in, I'm sure they're coming in fast, I wanted to cover is where to find this chart in ChurchTrac. Okay, the accounting chart that I showed you at the beginning. When you go into our user guide, okay, all I did was I literally typed in accounting, and it's in the getting started with accounting reference, okay? And I'm weird like this. I like to actually, me and my computer are fighting. I'm losing. Go down to the next steps under additional resources. There's the accounting chart. It has its own link. Wes, I can actually send that to you so that you can put it directly into our...
Well, I closed the chat. So, but what we can do is in the email that goes out later, I can maybe have
include that. Yeah. That would be awesome. And that way they have a reference. Again, this is completely printable. I know for a fact it prints on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It is legible, which is actually really good. I like the fact that it's legible. Because that was actually my biggest concern, was like, old people aren't going to be able to read this, including me. So it is legible, and it's a really good tool. So it is, again, found in your accounting. There it goes. Getting started with accounting user guide.
Perfect.
And you have Matt's lovely getting started video and all of your tools. So that's a great tool.
All right, Lori, ready to start answering some questions? I'm just going to start calling them all out to you, and you can start answering them. First question is from Alan, and it had 4 votes for it. Do you offer a payroll package? Do you offer payroll?
Alan, I'm sorry, we do not have a payroll option. You can bring your payroll to us and we will teach you how to enter it in ChurchTrac. We actually have user guide links and references to that.
Show the user guide article, because we do have an entire article. In fact, I think you're on the video for it.
Am I?
If I do recall. We've done so many videos now that we've all forgotten what videos different people are a part of. But I vaguely remember writing the script for you on this one, for payroll.
So recording payroll in accounting.
Let's see if it was.
It is me. Look at there.
Yeah. What would have been funny is if you would have been wearing that exact jacket, something similar, but still.
We don't do winter well here. At least I don't. So how to record payroll? We do have this, and we are also looking at the possibility of being able to import a payroll file from Patriot. I don't know how that's looking because I've been assigned that task and I haven't gotten a file that we can use use yet, so I'm working on that.
Yeah, we're always adding new things here at ChurchTrac. So at the time of this video here in January 2025, if you're watching this a year later,
right,
we may already have something in place.
Right, exactly.
Karen's asking, do you have a report that provides the budget/actual for month and year to date?
Karen, hold on a minute. Let me get into the right account here.
Budget versus actual.
We have a budget versus actual. I have no idea what's in here. Under our budget reports, there is a budget versus actual. You can show the projected as well, but if you, and this auto show all and hide all depends on, is determining what you see based on what you've got in this screen. We're just going to do auto because everything is open. But in this budget versus actual, there's a year to date, there's a received. It's not going to give you us 1 month.
Yeah.
Because budgets, easy for me to say, are cumulative. So if you're 6 months into your budget, the year-to-date received is going to be what you've taken in for the last 6 months.
Yeah.
It's not going to give you just what you took in June, for example. Okay? Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah. Just want to know where it was. Dale and 6 other people voted for this one. This is a big question.
Holy guacamole.
How do you import a receipt from your phone? And there's a couple ways you can do this. If you already have like a bunch of receipts you've taken pictures of, well, you can just send all those images to your computer if you just want to drag and drop them.
Email them.
You can email them, or you can actually use your phone itself because you can go onto the accounting screen on your phone and then just select.
Put them in, yeah. One of the things I know for, like, we're Mac users here, but my husband is a Windows user, so when he wants to take anything from his iPhone and send it to his computer, he has to email it as an attachment. That way he can open it up and then save it on his computer.
Yeah.
Because they don't really play nicely together always.
All right, so Jared, can you speak to how accounting interacts with giving? So I think maybe showing the deposit feature real quick.
Yes, I can do that, Jared. So important for you to know, in the giving screen, when you have an entry, okay, there's an actions button that allows you to create the deposit right here, okay? This create deposit button takes the information in the giving screen and deposits it over, easy for me to say, into the accounting screen with these details. So I'm going to create this deposit for $112.25. I'm taking both these entries and I'm going to put them in my checking account for my whole deposit. Yay, I did it. We even give you an applause right there. Great job. You did it well. So then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to look at my 112 deposit. This was my Sunday offering. There are my 2 categories that were given to. All the details come over. Wes, if I could stomp anything into the ground, I want to stomp this one. Use that button.
Yes.
Okay? Because these details are important and they don't come from giving automatically into accounting. And when you're using the link sync option here at the bottom, the import or the sync, the details that come from the bank doesn't care what it was given to.
They do not.
That's critical to the church. So if your deposit is already in place, and you can change the date to match the day it actually hit the bank. So some churches do a weekly deposit, but that week is the Friday after the Sunday. That's fine. Put it in the bank on the date you actually deposited it, but use that create deposit button for all of those details.
Yes. And one of the most common things we see when churches are like, I'm doing everything right and my account is going negative, but I've been entering all my giving, it's because they weren't hitting the deposit.
Deposits.
Yeah. And please don't create deposits separately. Like, use that giving. That's the whole point of adding transactions in the giving screen.
Is the details.
Yeah. All right, Lynn's asking, how do you handle a return check entered into giving so it is not on the giving statement but still has a transaction to check off when bank reconciliation is attempted?
So Lynn, you actually do have to go back into the giving screen and zero out the giving that was entered. So if somebody gives, and unfortunately it happens from time to time, and their check bounces, do a negative entry to zero out that entry, okay? And then in the accounting screen, you're going to have to do the same thing, because originally the deposit had that data in it. You're going to go put that deposit in the bank. When that check is returned, you need the entry of the return amount and any fees that are associated. So it would be a 2-line item entry in your accounting screen to account for the return of the money that's being taken back out of your account, and then any transaction fees that are associated.
And then, so on that same note, what do you do to close out a check that was never cashed?
Well, in that case, you have to actually void the check, and so you would take the the dollar amount out, put $0 because it's going to count against your accounting balance, okay, not your bank balance, but your actual register balance. So then write the details. That's what that whole note at the end is for. This is not, again, designed for a small paragraph. This is just a small text box, but put the data, check was never cashed, amount of, boom. And that way you have it. If something is said about it, Wes, and the person comes back and says, I lost the check, can you reissue it? Then you know, okay, that's great. But you're voiding this check. So the payee would be Jimmy's Lawn Care, like that.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, and we've got our user guide article. If you search voiding check, you'll find an article about all that too. Andrea is asking, how is the best way to record liability payments? Should you do a transfer from a checking to the mortgage liability account?
Andrea, this gets a little complicated, and so what I would ask you to do is to reach out to our support team, and we have a workaround, because ChurchTrac Accounting is not really built for tracking principal and interest, and that's what you're doing with the mortgage liability, is you're tracking principal and interest. So there's a process that we would have you go through so that you can keep accurate, detailed records. So reach out to our support team, and we'll provide that process. I think we actually have a user guide article on that as well.
There may be, and I know at some point we're probably going to have something even deeper that goes into similar topics.
Yeah.
Question from Candy: what happens when the storage for scanned invoices, receipts, etc. is full? Your ChurchTrac account just stops working, unfortunately.
No, it doesn't. Wes is, okay, you guys, you can't always take everything he says for granted, because I do that and I get stuck. ChurchTrac actually has a 10 KB storage?
10 KB would not be enough, Lori.
10 MB, okay.
10 gigabytes, GB.
So it's a lot. So the way that this was described to me is that you would have to have lots of songs and videos in place that you use with worship before you would even come near your file storage.
I think out of all, we have thousands of churches using ChurchTrac.
I think we've got
maybe one that has gone over that, and that's because they were throwing in lots of high quality video files. Yeah.
Big files. So with that being said, there's a nominal fee that if you go over, I think it's $2 or $3 a month or something like that.
Yeah, per gig or something. I can't remember, but if you reach out to our support team, they can tell you the exact number amount.
But I mean, you've got to have a lot. It's like filling up a Gmail box. It takes a lot.
Well, we discovered last week that someone we were working with did fill up their Gmail, and I was like, I didn't know that was possible.
I mean, I have 58,000 emails in my Gmail box right now, so.
Oh man. All right, Jenny's asking, is there a way to highlight, bold, or color expense category titles on the budget report? Don't think there is. No.
I can't.
Lori's like, I don't think so.
I really wish there was. We actually did have that functionality at one time, but we no longer have that. So.
And the developers are listening now like, you just gave us more work.
Yeah. I love color coding reports, just so that you know, but no.
Yeah. I bet you love Post-it notes too, don't you, Lori?
You know I do. I got a basket full of different kinds of Post-it notes.
All right, Lisa. Lisa, you said, I've been syncing and reconciling from bank statements, but am getting ready to start using only ChurchTrac. What are things I need to be aware of, since I'm used to just pulling them online? Is that best or what? Lisa,
I mean, it's not a problem to pull them online. My biggest thing that I can impart to you, the tidbit of knowledge, would be you really want to use, if you're going to link and sync with your bank and bring that stuff into your ChurchTrac account, use the rules to change the payees, because the payee titles that the bank provides can be a series of numbers and dates that don't mean anything. So make sure that you update those transactions before you bring them into your account register. So in that import window, Okay, let me get down here. In this import sync window, this is where your transactions will come in, and it will say transactions to review for checking account. Don't just grab them and drop them in. Review them, update them, make them make sense, because once you move them here, from here, which can be in one fell swoop,
it's going to have all the titles, everything. And
it gets really weird.
Well, and so this is probably one of my favorite features, I guess, for me to nerd out now in accounting, is by creating these rules, Lori, and then being able to reapply the rules too.
Yeah, once you may not know what you need until you need it.
And that's how I was when I was first doing my setup for this. And so I would start creating rules as I was looking at all the transactions and saying, oh man, like I don't want this to say this in my register. I want it to say JEA or whatever.
So you
and
create
so
your rule,
I created my rules and then I started reapplying them.
Yeah. It's beautiful, but this won't work if you go ahead and stick them all on the register.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Apply your rules. And here's a fun little fact. I don't know if we've really ever talked about this much, but we have a lot of machine learning in place to really aid this whole idea of making your register just look beautiful, because it's going to automatically start learning, okay, this transaction, every time this comes in, it gets marked as this category and this. And so the system already kind of does that smartly.
It gets smarter.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that.
Unlike me as I've aged, I feel like I haven't gotten smarter.
I'm feeling that one, Wes.
Or maybe I'm a smart aleck. All right, Lillian, I need to enter a January 2025 payment to be applied to December 2024 budget, but I'm still not finished reconciling December. Can I enter the January transaction in December? And what date should I use? Payment was made on January 10th, 2025.
If I'm understanding correctly, and since I'm not the one reading it, I'm trying to listen hard. It sounds like this was I would need to know more about what the transaction is. That's what I would say to you. Create a support ticket, send that question in, because it depends on what the transaction is how I would answer that question.
Yeah, and like what it's going to and stuff. Yeah. How do you, just from Jared, how do you avoid duplicate deposits between bank sync and giving deposit?
You use the giving deposit. You do not bring in the deposit that came from the bank.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important, especially if you're using online giving, because if you've turned on your automatic online giving deposits, Wes,
which you should,
and we have a help article on that, but the window is kind of self-explanatory when you click it. If you turn that on and you're using the create deposit button, the entries coming from the bank should only be used if there's something that's missed to alert you to the fact that you missed it, so you can go back and create it from the giving screen. I would not deposit any, Can
we show something that I think is going to be super cool? So manage your import rules. So actions, manage import rules. So a lot of churches create an import rule where if the payee transaction or whatever contains this, then it skips it. And so, for example, Stripe, if it's coming from Stripe, it automatically skips it. So that's a tactic I've seen by a lot of churches just for that exact situation.
This is the option that you would do.
Yeah, automatically skip transaction, do not import.
Yeah. And it's important because that's key. You don't want those duplicates, but you need the details. The details come from the giving screen, not the bank.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Other questions here as we tear through them. Lori, we've answered 15 so far and we still have 26. We're going to try to answer every single one of them. And I'm not going to necessarily say we're going to put a cutoff here, but there may be a time point we're just not going to be able to get to all of them, just depending on how we're doing on time. But just know that you can create a support ticket and we'll answer.
We're pretty good about answering those.
Yeah, if you submit a support ticket now, you're probably going to get a reply within about an hour and a half, give or take right now.
Just because it's just busy season.
All right. I messed up. I laugh when I see things that say I messed up because all I can think of is I mess up all the time too. I hear you.
Welcome to my world.
I messed up with starting mid-year and not setting it up correctly. How can I restart without losing last year's information? And a couple people voted this up, so I think a few people are in this boat, Lori.
I think part of it is going to be my question, and please, please, please know, this is definitely a support ticket because we want to help you individually.
Yeah.
Like, this is very specific because it's going to depend on where you messed up. So I messed up can be, I set my categories up wrong. I have 30 funds that I didn't need because I was running one category to one fund. I didn't set my bank accounts up right. There's so many ways that you can mess up accounting, and I've seen so many different things. I would say, please, please, please reach out to my team. They're great. Yeah. Even I'm grabbing tickets and Wes is grabbing tickets. So we're working this together. If you say exactly what you said, but then provide a little bit of details, we will be so glad to help you and point you in the right direction. Ideally, unless you just flubbed up the whole thing,
which happens,
we wouldn't tell you to start over from scratch. But I have said those exact words. There's no real easy way to fix this without starting over from scratch.
Which I want to reinforce this. This is so important. Like, you will never encounter a company that like wants you to reach out to them. Like most companies, especially in software companies, they're like, all right, can we not ever have to talk to our people? We just want to make money from them.
Right, exactly.
We want you to reach out to us. And so whenever you do set up your accounting and everything, if you are in this step of your journey in ChurchTrac, please, please, please reach out to us. Say, hey, I've set up my accounting. I want you all to review it to make sure that everything looks good.
Right.
And our team actually looks at it. Mm-hmm. We look at it and say, okay, we see their categories. These categories look good. We see their funds that they put in. They have these funds here. Maybe they can consolidate to one. I'm going to let them know about this. And the accounts look great. So please reach out to us. That way we can catch things early and keep you from having to have these conversations 6 months later where you're like, oh man, none of my reports work right and stuff like that.
Correct. And I mean, your success is our success because our desire is to partner along with you in this process and not make you do it all by yourself.
From Anonymous, what service do you provide to assist changing over from QuickBooks to ChurchTrac to get started? So it's not like a QuickBooks service we offer. We mentioned a little earlier, we call it Class, and that's our ChurchTrac Limited Accounting Setup Service. It's at the time of this recording, it's $3.99. And in this service, we set up your accounting for you. You still have to provide us with your chart of accounts and all that kind of stuff from QuickBooks, and then we get to work on that. But yeah, that's something we offer if you are interested. A lot of church leaders I talk to...
You just reach out to support, by the way. That's actually how you get us on board with that, is you make that initial request, and then we send you all the details, and then you tell us what you need from there. And we go back and forth until we are ready to make that jump. And we, that's part of what we do. Again, we're passionate about this, Wes. We really, really, really want to see you succeed in using this program. And that's part of it. It's just, jumping in and getting dirty with you.
Well, not only are we passionate about it, but, and you just said earlier, you like to nerd out on this stuff.
I completely nerd out.
Oh my goodness. Now, if we talk about worship and scheduling or getting deep into automations, I'll nerd out. But accounting...
Now I do love automations, yeah.
That's not my thing. That's your thing. All right, Gabe. Gabe says, how do you categorize a transfer between accounts? Looking at transfers for previous donations and not double add a donation. She's thinking.
So Gabe, transfers from one account to another do not involve a category. Remember, I told you that categories and funds are not account specific. So when you move money at the bank, you go to and you move $500 from your checking account to your savings account. You do the exact same thing in ChurchTrac, the exact same way, and you do that by creating a new transaction. Okay, and in that new transaction, you select the transaction type of account transfer. It is very important that you know what fund or bucket your money lives in. That $500 might be general fund money, but it might be youth money, or it might be missions money. You got to know, and if it's split up between a couple of different funds, then you're going to have to do this a couple of times. But this is not about categories anymore. This is just about moving money from one account to another. If you need to move money from one category/fund to another category/fund, that is what we call a fund-to-fund transfer, and that involves two line items. One that moves the money from the general offerings general fund, okay, and this is an expense, so we're just going to say $10. We're just using this, okay? And we're going to move this to missions, if you spell it right. I can't type today, Wes.
We're not used to that little keyboard in that computer.
Yeah, there's a whole lot going on here. To missions, and notice here it updated my fund. Then I put minus $10 because I'm depositing money into an expense transaction, using an expense transaction. This is a $0 transaction, Wes, because it updates and it just moves the money from one category/fund to another category/fund. You don't necessarily have to change categories. You don't necessarily have to change funds. It just moves the money. But if you're moving from one account to another, categories are not involved.
David has a question. I don't know if we're going to be able to show this live just because our account may not be set up for this, Lori. Can you give an example of a mortgage loan transaction with principal and interest, please? I don't think we really have our account set up for that,
It's not
and it
set
would take
up.
too long.
David, this is a very specific type of transaction, and it's like I said before, there's a specific process that we have you go through. We actually do provide you screenshots when we provide you the information, so reach out to our support team and ask them for the example of how this is done, and we'll send it to you.
Diane, if I should reconcile monthly, do I need to wait for all checks to clear first? I have had people hold check for a few months.
Stop.
Yep.
First, when you reconcile, you're not looking at the transactions that were written in the month. You're looking at the transactions that cleared the bank.
Okay.
Okay? So the answer to the question is, you take your bank statement that you get from the bank and you put that date range in, it'll have a beginning balance in place. You put your ending balance from that bank statement, and your numbers should match what's on your statement, what's in your reconcile screen. Put the date of your statement ending in that screen. And then when you look at the next screen, you will see all the transactions that cleared the bank. If that check sits in your bank account for 3 months and doesn't clear, the month that it does clear, it'll appear on your statement.
Candy had a good thing. So can you let others know that when they run the income statement in the PDF, it will say other funds, but if they run the income statement as an export to CSV, it'll actually show all of the funds.
And what she's saying is this: when you run the report, notice here I have all these funds, okay? If I have used all of these funds, I have a limited amount of real estate on my page, okay? So when I go in to view my report, I really don't need 2021 in here.
That'd be a long report.
It would be a terribly long report. When I go in here to view my report, it shows the funds that I have in place at the front. Notice there, these 4 funds right here, these 4. Everything else is grouped as other, and it's because there's just not enough real estate to list 9 funds across the top of this page, Wes. So it groups it. Now, there are a couple of things you can do. You can rearrange these funds if you want it in a PDF.
Yeah.
Or, as Candy
Candy
was saying, you can export your statement to a CSV, and when you do that, it'll list all of your funds and how they were used.
Yeah.
So, but some people don't like playing with CSV. So thank you, Candy. I do appreciate that. But keep in mind, some people are afraid of a spreadsheet. They just are.
Give me the spreadsheets. I live off of those formulas and equations. Angela, can ChurchTrac be used for a school with the church also? Yeah.
Yes.
But
there is a caveat.
Yeah, Lori's like, hold on.
Yeah, I want to make sure he hits this. If your school is not using the same banking information that the church is using, if these are 2 different EINs or 2 different banking entities that you're using, you're not commingling the money, it is very important for you to understand that you would really want to have a separate account, ChurchTrac account for your school if you're not commingling those monies. Because remember, categories and funds are not account specific. So if you have these categories for the school and everything else is for the church, it's going to get combined.
Yeah, it's just, you're going to have an unnecessarily complex accounting because you're trying to do so much under a program that's really designed for that one entity. I think it's from Jenny. Can automated statements, income statements, for example, be sent to multiple people? Yes. Yeah, you can. I've actually witnessed this before. I was working with the church a few months ago, and I was looking at their automations just because we both got to nerding out about it on our Zoom call. Yeah, I know. See, I nerd out on automations, Lori.
I love them.
But I think they they had like 30 or 40 different people getting all these different reports, and it was just one automation.
It's just setting up.
I typically don't recommend that many actions. It can get
wonky, but you can add as many actions to it as you want to. But this is my OCD, Wes. It's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. But like, if I'm going to have this accounting report and it has to go out to 4 people, then I'm going to set up this accounting report automation.
Yeah.
And then if I'm going to have my 4 people, and then if I'm going to go to another accounting report, I'm going to set it up for these 4 people. I don't like everything grouped together because I can't manage that and make sure nothing gets screwy.
Yeah, it just comes down to how you operate. And I see
how my brain works.
A lot of people, when they create automations, they will lump a bunch of different automations to each person and then have the different reports.
Right.
So it just comes down to how you work. When I import a bank statement, it's from Wendy, would I still need to add transactions under payees?
Say it again.
When I import a bank statement, would I still need to add transactions under payees? If they're using import rules or the system already knows what payees they've been using, it'll apply.
Sometimes it'll update if it recognizes it. It kind of depends on how the bank sends the data. But honestly, for me, if I know that I have certain payees that are going to drop in monthly or whatever, set it up as an automation to drop in, update the amount, and then when you import your bank statement, you're using this as a checks and balances rather than saying, I'm just going to bring it all in and whatever cleared the bank is going to be accounted for. Because if something was paid during that month and didn't clear the bank, you have no record of it.
Yeah.
So in your personal finance, you wouldn't do that. And so in your church finance, you shouldn't do that. If a bill is paid, it should be recorded in the transaction register, and then use that import or that sync to be your checks and balances. There are too many tools in ChurchTrac that allow you to automate transactions or drop in, payees quite easily instead of doing everything at the end of the month. And Wes, just so you know, what we see in busy season is, oh my gosh, I haven't done any banking for 4 months and now I have to get it all done. And it should have been done yesterday because the report's due this afternoon.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot I can do about that. I can't make that work for you.
Accounting, and this is for those of you who are new to your position, maybe you just become treasurer at your church, or you're new to this whole concept of just tracking all the finances for your church. It's kind of like me whenever I was in grade school. Believe it or not, I was a terrible kid in school, Lori. And I never did my homework, but come, the end of the
Your mother was a teacher.
I know, it was bad. But when it came into the semester, I would want to do all the extra credit in the world, but not do my homework, what was expected of me. And so I always say, like, with accounting, you really don't want to treat it like extra credit where you're like, oh man, it's like, I haven't done it in 4 months. I need to hurry and log in and put it all in.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Well, and it's something we have actually personally seen with churches that have had wrongdoings going on, or things in which, because they weren't monitoring it very closely, they had some serious issues financially they didn't catch till 4 months later.
Correct.
Because they weren't looking at their books. And so what would you say, like, I know we're off on a way big tangent, but like bar minimum, how often should a church at least be looking at their books just to make sure things are in order?
Most churches, Wes, have bills that are due every single week. Record the bills that are due that you're paying. If you're recording those contributions like you're supposed to be, okay, and you're paying your bills like you're supposed to be, you always know what your running bank balance is. If you wouldn't do it at home, don't do it to the church. There is so much more accountability at the church than there is in your personal finances. If you're not responsible and not transparent, bad things happen. And we've seen those bad things, Wes. It's just not good. So at least once a week.
Yeah, well, it's just the nature of, because we see the accounts of thousands of churches across the world, and so we see what it looks like when there's not good accountability in place. I don't know how in the world we got on that subject, but yeah, accountability. All right, so just to kind of a little pause here, because we've lost about half the people, because I think everybody that wanted to see all the things has seen it. They're like, great, or they were on their lunch break or whatever, and we still have over 100 people in here hanging out. Lots of questions here. And so
let's
keep
beat them
tearing
up
through them.
as
Yeah,
much as we can.
We'll keep going through these questions. And I just want to reiterate, because I know some of you all are probably like, hey, Wes, like, this has been great. I've gotten a question answered too, but I got to go. Thank y'all so much for joining. We appreciate it. And we hope that this was super beneficial in helping you navigate this complex subject of accounting, or at least for me, it's complex just because I'm worship leader, Lori. You can tell me to play any diminished, chord out there or whatever, and I'm going to be able to play it. But then you tell me, hey, can you balance my books? I'm going to be like, let me go get Lori, because
see, that's how we work together, Wes. Because I have no idea what a diminished chord is.
That's okay, and most worship leaders don't either. That's the funny part. And they just flashed our little YouTube thing on the bottom of the screen there, just to reiterate, like, our YouTube channel, such a great resource, and our Facebook group, that is such a phenomenal resource. And honestly, if you're wanting to like dive deeper, I would say, into just not even just learning features of ChurchTrac, but just deeper into ministry, and you're wanting advice from other ministry leaders like yourself that are deep in ministry, just like you. That's a great place to go. We've been seeing so many church leaders in there just not only like bring forth some really good content that's helped so many others, but also like church leaders being vulnerable and saying like, y'all, I'm struggling with this. What have you done? How have you created campaigns in your church that have been successful for fundraising and stuff like that? So it's a good place.
This is the time of the year for that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. My church has actually started that last week. All right. More questions. We're gonna try to answer these questions super fast, Lori. Now, this is gonna be like our lightning round, except it's a very long lightning round because we have 20 active questions. Oh my goodness.
Okay, run.
Stripe, TLC. All right. Stripe. What if we have a Stripe account already? Sorry, I was struggling reading that. How to connect ChurchTrac to an existing Stripe account? That's an option we already have.
So in the giving screen, and it depends on who's managing your Stripe account, whether you're managing it or wherever you're coming from is managing it. So you have to find that out in your Stripe account. I can't tell you that. But to link ChurchTrac and your Stripe account, you're going to go into the giving screen. You're going to go to online giving, and there will be a button. Let's go to the other.
Yeah, I was going to say, if the other account may have it.
Oh, it
logged you out. That's okay.
Okay.
But there will be a button.
There is a button here that allows you to connect, and what it says is either log in or create a new account. So you click that button, you log into your Stripe account, and that's what makes the connection. And then there will be a URL and a QR code on the screen. Once you do that, you just refresh, boom, it's there when you're connected, and then people can start using that to give through your Connect page or directly through an online giving link.
Jessica, how do you change an amount from a repetitive payee once you have saved it? You just go to the payee? You
go literally, not in the checkbook register, okay? Because that's going to change the transaction. But you go to the payee, you find Missionary Angela, for example, and you change, okay, now we're going to support her at $125 each time we send it. And there you go. And then it saves automatically. So the next time you go to use it, it'll have the updated amount on it.
Cool. All right, I almost said a joke for this next question, but I held back because this is actually serious. So once I import my bank into the trial, what happens if I choose not to use ChurchTrac? So a person has put in a bunch of financial information in ChurchTrac. What happens if they're like, you know what, ChurchTrac isn't a good fit, or right now we just don't have the time to use ChurchTrac? What happens?
So if you've imported a bank statement into your ChurchTrac account, and I'm just going to be difficult here and do this, you can go right here and click on that little sticky note with a pencil, and you delete it.
Yeah.
It's that easy. Well, we don't save this data if your account goes away. If you don't choose to go with ChurchTrac and we delete your account, that data is gone. It doesn't go anywhere. Nobody has access to it.
Yeah. And for those of you who are just, like me, where you're like, I'm super big on security, and this is something like anytime I use anything, I'm always reading the disclaimers. But if you want to learn more about our security practices here at ChurchTrac and just kind of how we treat your data and everything, we treat it nicely. But go on our support page, and if you look up like data and security, we have an article about that and everything. That'll give you some more insight into just kind of how we operate too, because security might as well be our middle name here, because a lot of churches, if you're not aware of like the industry and stuff, churches have big targets because a lot of churches don't take security very seriously.
Nope. Or understand the need for it.
Yes, and a lot of churches think, oh, well, no one would, what are they going to want to do?
Nobody's going to fraud the church.
No one wants to have what are they going to do with the addresses and phone numbers of all my members? Well, it's called identity theft, and it's a crime. Not to steal quotes from The Office, but anyways, once I import I already answered that. Now I'm on Office quotes. I want to start quoting it later.
Oh, no.
How do you edit a category in budgets? How do you edit a category in budgets?
Well, when you edit a category, Wes, from the accounting screen, you can't edit a category name anywhere except categories. So when you click on it, you can edit the name by changing it in the category properties. Whatever you change here affects every transaction and every use of that category. So I have people go in and delete categories. And it says there's 122 transactions linked to this category. What do you want to do with it? And they move it to another category and they delete it and they go, oh, I needed that. Guess what? It was reassigned. So I can bring back the category, but I can't unassign it to where all those other transactions. So be careful with that process.
Angie, you're asking about creating and posting current transactions. That's done with automations, and check out our online user guide if you want to dive deeper into that. We already have showed it a couple times, creating automations. It's Carmen. When adding a bank account, is the start date of the statement the same as your new balance as of 12-31-24? So I would put in 12-30-24?
Like I told you before, every single bank statement is different. So there's a starting date and there's an ending date, okay? And they may call it something different, but in essence, there's a date that starts your statement. Then there's the additions and the subtractions, and then there's the date that the statement closed. It might be a statement closing date and a statement opening date or whatever. If you're starting fresh with ChurchTrac, the statement opening date, okay, that you're starting with, just go back one day. If you're starting with, if you're using this statement and you're using the statement ending balance, that date is fine with the ending balance. Just make sure that you get those details correct.
Jessica, can you connect your bank account to ChurchTrac? If you're in the United States, chances are you can. Our Stripe connection supports about 95% of the banks in the United States. So just try using BankSync and see if you can. Bill, I can't find the accounting reference that is being shown. Where in help is that?
Bill, I'm hoping you're talking about the chart because that's what I'm going to show you. So if you go into the accounting and you go show all help topics and you go accounting and go to getting started with accounting, okay? You'll see Matt's lovely face on there. And scroll all the way down to additional resources. And there's an accounting chart, it's a blue link. It says our downloadable chart to give you a visualization of how these three things are connected in the software. That's what you're going to click and it opens up that chart for you.
And we're going to probably make an update in the user guide and make it more prolific and make it more in your face. Yeah, so we'll make that update today actually once I get out of here, which we've got a few questions and then we can make that update. All right, so Frank, so you have online support where we can you have online support where you can access our ChurchTrac account online. Yes, we can access it if you want us to. That's the thing. Like we don't just go on.
If you don't give us permission, we don't get in it.
Yeah, we don't sit around here all day and just cruise on people's accounts. That's not what we do. Our organization severed our relationship with our organization that used to hold our QuickBooks Online. We no longer have access to that. I have an Excel file for those transactions. Can I import a CS file? Unfortunately not, but here's what I would recommend to you. Sorry, I keep forgetting what camera to look at, and my team's probably gonna read me after this. And be like, Wes, do you not know? Are you colorblind, Wes? I think I'm just gonna start telling them I'm colorblind. Anywho, so in that situation, I have actually heard of a few churches using online tools that convert files, where if you have a certain file type, you can have it converted to a CSV file, or in this case, you would need to convert that CSV file to a QBX file.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
So I don't know the situation. But if you have access to your banking,
Yeah.
okay, I know most banks will provide a bank statement for up to about 180 days.
Yeah.
So you might be able to get a bank export. I don't know what bank you use. Some of them, I know there are
Most
just a
will
couple.
provide for a year, because my bank, I can go back I think I went back 4 years once. Yeah.
They'll charge you for that, but they can give it to you.
Yeah.
But if you have access to that and it's in one of the 4 formats that we export or can import, you can use those bank statements. And that would probably be the easiest thing rather than trying to find the converter. But it also depends on how much history you want to bring in. But I am sorry for your situation, though.
I keep seeing it. So TLC is one of our users here, and I just keep thinking of the songs from TLC as I see their name. But are you able to create a budget and or fund without adding a bank account?
No.
All right, next question.
Wait, let me give you an explanation. You knew I wasn't going to just
I know. So I was trying to move on.
So what updates your budget is the transactions that you have in your accounting register, and those are the deposits from giving and the transactions that are recorded. So you don't have any data in a budget unless you have data in the account.
All right. Now, I just was told by our team, we are at a point, our cameras are going to start overheating and stuff because we just typically don't do live streams this long. But this is why we have our support. So if we didn't get to your question here, just can we customize the reference? Yes, you can. Is there a phone app? You can access this on your phone browser anytime. Do you have the option for electronic cent tithe and offering? Not sure what you mean by that, but reach out to our support team for that. When recording cash deposits, is there a way to upload via CSV template using the donor's name instead of a reference number, Lori?
You have to have an email address or a member number to upload into the giving screen, and then you can deposit to accounting. Can
you edit tithes or categories / funds after you've added to your register when importing?
I mean, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, since support taken on that one, we got to dive deeper. If we have 1 year of records in ChurchTrac, is there a report that we can run for our pastor so that we can set up a budget? Yeah, there's a few different reports.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just run them and that'll give you the information. Are you going to do a webinar on worship? You better believe I'm doing a webinar on worship. I'm actually going to introduce my new CD live album for Weston's worship songs, and I'll be selling them for $0 because it's not actually real. But yes. Are you going to do...
Bring me your guitar.
I will bring my guitar. I will, as a prop. I'll put it back there. And then the last question from Gail. Balancing bank statements. If I'm understanding it correctly, the bank statement is linked to the system. I balance the paid items. If I'm going to show the actual bank balance for the month, I should make an adjust for checks not cleared.
No.
Nope.
No, you're smudging a little bit too much information in there. So reach out, Gail, because we definitely want to get you on the right track with the thinking, because the process is not as difficult as you're making it.
All right. Now here's something fun I'm going to do, because we're at the end and a few of you are still in here, and I opened up the chat just to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, everyone.
We do have a support channel that you can still get all of your questions answered. So please create a ticket and we will be glad to help you.
We had so much fun doing this, Lori. I appreciate you coming in. We had to prepare ourselves for the war room today because we knew going into this we were going to have a lot of questions and covering just so much content.
And we'll be live next week doing the same exact thing without all of the presentation. So it'll just be Q&A.
Just Q&A. And everybody's going to get an email about that and stuff. And for those of you who've stayed to the very end, I'm going to do something special. I want you to send me an email. I hate doing this sometimes because I get so many emails, but I'm going to do it anyways. My email is weston@churchtrac.com. Weston@churchtrac.com.
WESTON.
And my team's putting it on the screen. Shoot me an email today. Let me know what you liked about this live stream and one thing you didn't like. I like to get feedback like this. Not that I need your words of affirmation, because honestly, my wife is amazing at that. She makes me feel good.
Really is.
But we just like to know what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, or things we can make better.
And how we can help better.
Yes. And I'm going to pick one of the emails that you all send me at random and give you a little prize. Maybe I'll hand out one of these cool fancy tangerine mugs. Maybe I'll give you a free website build. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how I'm feeling. But yeah, all you have to do to enter to win is just send me an email with your feedback, and I'll pick one at random. So there you go. Lori, Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was fun. Team out there, David especially, thank you for making this happen. And all of you out there that decided to hang out and,
visit.
Look at and visit, thank you. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye.